For more reaction to the scenes that we've been speaking about and have been seeing during the night, let's cross live to Sreeram Chaulia, who's professor at the Jindal School of International Affairs. Thanks for taking the time to speak to us at short notice today. Yet another tragedy in France, Sreeram, late on Thursday evening. Why has France been targeted so many times recently?
France, as you know, has been involved as a prominent NATO member in the bombing campaigns in Iraq, and has been supporting also the efforts against ISIS in Syria. So, and French intelligence, French actors around the world have been actively seen to be involved in anti-terror, counter-terror measures. So therefore, there is a degree of animosity towards France. ISIS believes that it can deter the bombings because ISIS is losing ground and believes that it can deter these bombings by counter-attacking on the soil of these coalition members like France. So that is there. And then France, as we know, has a very serious internal social fault lines, and those are being exploited. If it is true that the attacker was of Tunisian origin, as is being said, then it's the same case. Moroccans, Tunisians, people from the Maghreb who have been disenfranchised and alienated in France can become easy fodder for ISIS. So either this is an inspired attack or an ISIS coordinated attack. Whichever way it is, the fact is that France remains in the crosshairs. It is a republic of fear. Unfortunately, it's also a republic of paralysis. It's got a political system that's on the verge of breakdown. The finance minister is throwing his hat in the ring and challenging the president. The president has very low ratings. I think they're struggling on all fronts. And so it's a combination of external and domestic factors that makes it so vulnerable to these kind of attacks.
Yeah, no group at this stage has taken responsibility for the attack, we have to add. We've heard from President Hollande that the state of emergency in the country will remain in place. They had been thinking about taking it away. That, of course, is going to stay now. But the terror threat has been up to, meaning restrictions on public gatherings and a military presence on the streets. What kind of difference is that going to make, do you think?
Well, if you recall, after the 9/11 attacks in the United States, there were attempts for follow-up plots, but they were averted. But France, unfortunately, it seems so repetitive now. If you go back to Charlie Hebdo and then Paris and now Nice, it looks like they are not able to learn the security lessons. They're not able to coordinate well with their neighboring countries. The borders are porous. We've seen that in the Paris attacks as well, and later in Brussels. The Europeans are struggling in terms of coordination among the countries involved, and these terrorists are taking advantage of these weaknesses. France is, it's a national day, it's such an important day, and Bastille Day, and they should have been much more cautious and alert to avert this. But of course, we are wiser after the fact. The modus operandi this time was quite different. It was not a kamikaze kind of attack like a Fedayeen style attack or a regular suicide bombing either. I mean, this is a truck that trucks have been rammed into hotels, for example, in the past around the world to cause damage with maximum explosives. But this is something else. This is like people just being mowed down, and we've seen a bit of this in the Palestinian territories some time ago, where people were being encouraged to use cars or anything to attack Jewish targets. But the scale on which this happened, nearly 85 or more people being killed, and just ramming through. I mean, this is just horrific, and perhaps it's meant to create that impact to paralyze the country further and to make them rethink their policies in Iraq and Syria.
Just what you mentioned a little bit earlier, the French president also said that the fight against terrorism will mean a step up of military action in the Middle East. Let's just take a listen together about what President Hollande said.
We will reinforce our military action in Syria and Iraq. We will target those who attack us on our own soil.
So very direct language about what he says the country is now going to do. Do you think that operations in the region is going to make France safer, or just more of a target now?
Well, I think we are getting numb to it now. In a way, the freshness of it is gone because they have become repeat targets. So I think there's no point in rescinding the policy. Rather, France should play a more active role because we need everybody, all hands on deck, to wipe out this menace called ISIS. So, and I think it's the right line to stay the course rather than withdraw. But when Spain was attacked, when Madrid was attacked, 2003, 2004. Then after that, the Spanish government withdrew from the fight. So these kind of actions, they know that they can possibly push the country to the verge. And I think the political crisis, the legitimacy of Francois Hollande is so high that people will be now calling out for a rethink. But nonetheless, I think it's hard to force a country that has Republican values like France to suddenly back out from a commitment like this. In boomerang on ISIS in the long run, where French commitment should actually remain and should actually increase.
If I can just get your thoughts on the actual attack. We've been looking at videos of the Lorry going through the Promenade des Anglais, that famous street in Nice. From what we know, we think that it travelled 2 kilometres through crowds, deliberately zigzagging, trying to hit as many people as the driver could. The driver was also shooting weapons. How was he able to evade police for that long? As you said, it was a public holiday, one of the most important days in the French calendar. So many people there, the second biggest city in terms of tourist numbers in the country, yet he was able to travel for so long, killing so many people.
Yeah, I think heads must roll. You know, what has happened is in the French security system, there is a degree of complacency that, you know, we have it all covered. And despite these repeated attacks, they've not really done a kind of a thorough overhaul, you know, of the security apparatus. And they have not brought in, you know, more advanced technology, or even if they have, it's applied very haphazardly. As I said before, the coordination with neighboring countries is poor. And in a way, they've become like sitting ducks. They're not able to produce a response that can stem this. And part of the blame should be taken by the ones at the highest levels, because, you know, they are infighting. There's so much political infighting. The Socialist Party, I think France is actually particularly vulnerable now because they are unable to get their act together. They don't have a system that can respond forcefully and effectively. They need a stronger state right now. Unfortunately, we are not in a position to see that.
Do you think that something like this, if it was a lone wolf attack, was directly planned by a group like ISIS, or if it was just this terrorist acting on his own, he had a terrorist mentality that what he was doing was directly linked to the group? It's almost scary to think about what can be carried out in the name of ISIS without direct actual intelligence from the group, people basically acting on their own.
Yeah, lone wolf, the inspirational attacks, so-called, rather than the coordinated ones, are more troubling because they can happen anywhere in the world and without a degree of preparation. But it looks, from the way the truck has been, you know, engineered to cause so much mass murder, I think it does look like this person has been trained. It's not possible for someone to hold his nerve if he's simply, you know, someone who's self-radicalized. But whatever is the case, as I said before, it does show that the ideology is the poison. It's not so much, you know, the actual actions, because the ideology means that even if ISIS is losing ground, they are saying now 20% territory has been lost. If Mosul is taken, for example, Baghdadi is gone. In spite of that, the ideology is not going away. So we must all remain alert to it. We must engage with the Islamic communities. France has been very poor at doing that with its own minorities, and we must be able to create a kind of a counter narrative at the ideological level. That has been missing because France, you know, and some of these European countries, and for that matter, even the US, they have, you know, there is a degree of racism, there's a religious bias, all these add up to ostracization of the community, and they don't cooperate with the police, and right there in some basement or in some building, a bomb is being assembled and people don't know about it, you know. And then after the attack, the media says, oh, we were so shocked, he was like a boy next door and we didn't know he was up to this kind of mischief.
If I could just get your thoughts, sorry to interrupt, but just your thoughts on one last aspect here, because there are reports that the majority of the victims, Sreeram, were foreign citizens. Many were actually children. Do you think that perhaps foreigners were deliberately targeting, considering the location on the Côte d'Azur in summertime?
Oh, yes, you remember the Dhaka attack that just happened in Bangladesh. Again, Japanese and Italians were the big targets. Similarly, in Istanbul airport, foreigners died in large numbers. So we can see that there is now an attempt to divide communities, divide societies, and divide the whole world into either you are with the jihadists or you are against it. And they have basically classified a lot of foreigners as infidels, as apostates and so on, and therefore they must be punished because they're corrupting the local culture and so on. So there are many aspects to these attacks, but mainly, yes, it is to create a sense of destabilization, that France cannot stand up on its feet, and that France is basically, finished in the sense that it doesn't have any defenses and they can strike at will. And this is a demoralizing thing too, because Paris and Nice, these kind of places are great tourist attractions. So it's actually a tragedy in that sense, because they can bring down the French economy even further. Remember, even Bin Laden was talking about how he could bring down the American economy through these strikes. So they are crafty, they are political, and they are actually pretty strategic when they target these. So be it inspired or coordinated, lone wolf or a kind of a big plot, at the end of the day, we're talking about huge impact, economic and political.
That analysis from Sreeram Chaulia, professor at the Jindal School of International Affairs. Always great to get your insight. Thank you.